You know, gatekeeping of any sort was deeply stitched into my reptile brain when it comes to certain stuff I'm passionate about. If you listen to any metal genre or band past the year 1991, you're a poser in my book. If you favor a Nissan R35 GTR and you don't like the R34 Skyline GTR, you suck, and please, don't talk to me. If you like newer games and you blame the older ones for having shitty cameras, shitty controls or crap graphics, then you are just an insufferable little runt and you are not a real gamer. Give it up and do something else with your miserable life, you filthy casual. The same thing could be applied to this unfortunate example that I'm gonna talk about today. First of all, reboot again? How many reboots do you actually need to milk this starred franchise to death? What's up with the name? Just Tomb Raider? So we can easily confuse it with the original that is also called what? Tomb Raider? So cool. Now we need to add the year beside it so we can clarify which one is which. But since it bears just the name Tomb Raider and nothing else, does this mean that it's gonna be yet another reboot of the first game? Yeah, I know, many useless questions, since you all already know it is its own game. The first one in the so-called Survivor trilogy. Yes, Crystal Dynamics has a habit of doing things in trilogies, I guess. I dreaded this moment since I was a gatekeeper, and I resented the fact that this game exists. Exists as being a poor man's attempt on creating an Uncharted-like game. If you asked me back then, I would say that Tomb Raider died as core design died. Over the years, I've learned the hard truth that maybe I should give this gatekeeping thing up. Maybe I'm depriving myself of good games after all. So, the time has come to get into dissection area with this game that proudly bears the name we all love and cherish. But is it actually Tomb Raider at its core? The rest of my mumbling could complicate the answer just for the sake of being, complicated. So I apologize in advance. I can't seem to help myself. Okay, I'll help myself, and I'll help you too. This Tomb Raider is not a Tomb Raider if you ask me. Here is why. First radical change is our beloved Lara Croft. This time rather young, 21-year-old fresh out of college heroine is voiced by Camilla Luddington, and her physical attributes have been scaled down to favor an even more realistic look. No more tits that are the sizes of small planets, or waist that is so narrow that you would think Lara was wearing a tight corset for 10,000 years. But you know what? I'm completely fine with that. I like realistic portrayals of the in-game humans anyways. But what is hard for me to ignore is her change in character. I'm so used to her being cold, pragmatic, stoic, witty, unfazed, sometimes a relentless force of reckoning that her portrayal in this game was a bit of a... I'm not gonna say shock, because I was aware of that. My face was more like this. Yeah, I get it. You could say she's 21, so she's young and this is her first proper adventure in this timeline. Okay, fair point, but she was 16 in the beginning of the last revelation.
I expected no less.
Or this section of Chronicles, and she was badass. So what's up with that? Why can't we have badass here?
Be quiet!
I mean, yes, Crystal Dynamics have already toyed with the idea and infused a little dose of disease called emotions in Lara Croft.
No, you're not
at least in Legend and a bit in Anniversary. But Lara's portrayal in the Underworld was spot on. They could have carried that kind of character into this game, but no, they opted for this. But Lara is fun in this game. While she's starving on this god-forsaken island that I will talk about later on, she needs to kill Bambi. This so-called adventure turns out to be very poetic, as it seems to be her first kill of anything that is alive and that big. Well, it's survival of the fittest, so it's justified. But that does not mean that she will not apologize to the poor Bambi, and that intense musical number will not go on conveniently as she is dissecting the carcass in order to eat meat. 10 minutes later, and the myriad of arrows will find their way from Lara's bow to the middle of the enemy's forehead. She will not even flinch. Just check this carnage of headshots. Hell, she'll even use fire arrows to set them on fire and blow them up with the grenade. So much for the sword this time, eh? What a girl she is. Let's throw one more grenade just to be sure. Yes, that's more like it.
You're not stopping me!
Yes, I'm not serious about this expedition.
In order for Lara not to be alone, we have a number of characters to accompany her along the way. Figuratively speaking, because she will be alone 100% of the gameplay time. Sporadic communication via walkie-talkie or sudden cutscene as she approaches some of them is the only way we get to see this bunch of losers in action. Or lack of action, since each and every one of them relies on Lara's help to save them from their misery. No problem, after all, she's still the star of the game. So, who do we have here? Here we have Samantha or Sam that serves as a plot device for this entire game. She is an integral part of the story. A story with supernatural tendencies that will render her captive for most of the time. So she is Tomb Raider's version of Princess Peach or Zelda, a damsel in distress. Sorry, Lara, but our princess is in another castle, or fortress, or dilapidated village, or whatever, you get a picture. Jonah is a big guy but with a big heart. When he's not firmly gripping the shotgun in defense of the crew, he'll be busy being a cook, ripping the fish guts open. Judging by his physique, he could probably lift 260 pounds in the bench press at least 8 times in one set like it's nothing. You don't want to piss that beast of a man now, do you? He's the one of the first who sensed that something is wrong with the entire Yamatai island, like some supernatural force is wreaking havoc. So that's why he would be on Lara's side when certain decisions were made. Unlike my least favorite character, Reyes. To keep the balance of the force, we have to have one bitchy person in the crew. And that unfortunate set of cards were dealt to her. After all, only an asshole would say something like this now, right? I mean, in a totally weird sense, she's right. But is that conversation really necessary? At least Lara had a comeback of sorts. It's just too bad I cannot shoot her with my bow. We also have our engineering Enrique Iglesias hero called Alex, old dog Captain Treasure Hunter Conrad, and desperate career Kickstarter Mr. Archaeologist called Whitman. These three are a bit more important to the story since their fates revolve closely around Lara. Okay now, that's a lot of characters introduced in a game that is not very long in particular. I'm afraid that this means less time for character development of each ally and less time to do some proper bonding with them. In other words, as I'm playing the game, I'm struggling to remember who are some of them and what's their story and deal in this adventure. This feeling is amplified since most of the work I'm doing alone as Lara, and lots of communication is done via radio. They are just reduced to voices and subtitles and that's it. But I reckon my complaint might be premature since this is the first game in the survival trilogy and I'm pretty sure I'll see some of the faces again, right? Let's drop some spoilers here. The story is actually very typical for the Tomb Raider franchise. A big cauldron of distilled whiskey, full of myths, stories, fiction, maybe some factual historical event or people, and a random ancient aliens episode. Would you like to have one shot of that godforsaken cocktail over the rocks, my friend? Wanna have a paper straw and little umbrella too? Okay, try, and cheers. This is the second time that the story of Tomb Raider is set in Japan, but unlike Tokyo, Lara and her crew opted for something more uncharted. What's better for your first adventure than traveling to some remote fictional island called Yamatai that operates only on one premise? That premise is, one way in, no way out. Unexplainable sudden storms are disabling anyone who tries to escape the island. It's like some sort of a curse, right? Turns out that this island of Yamatai was once ruled by the Sun Queen called Himiko, and she had the ability to control the weather in her prime. In order for there to be some kind of order, Himiko's soul needs to be transferred to a successor before she dies. That of course didn't happen, and the soul was trapped in a dead body. Let's call it trapped in a limbo. So we can assume that the storms are a form of lashing out. You know, I cannot leave my body, you cannot leave this island, mortal. Many people throughout the years, such as US Marines, Portuguese traders, or Second World War soldiers were stranded on this island unsuccessfully trying to escape it. There is tons of evidence left in the form of diaries, items, secret tombs attesting to that. There's even a functioning cult order of idiots called Solari, governed by their leader called Matthias, who is ruling the island in the favor of Queen. Matthias reckons that they will be free once they find a successor for the Queen's spirit. Remember how I said that the SAM is the plot device? Well, guess what that means? Yep, connecting some dots, and you guessed that right. Cheesy or not, you can really feel that developers have tried to create the best story in the franchise yet. The game is full of cinematics, dialogues, character developments, tryouts, and whatnot. So that's good, I suppose. Let's play the game. In the year 2013, controlling a character and the camera in a 3D environment was refined very much, and Tomb Raider is not an exception. Comparing this game to any other before it, it's like night and day. Motion capture technology is also used here, so Lara moves as fluid and as natural as possible. Her moveset is just a natural progression from LAU trilogy gameplay mechanics. Yes, that means the retainment of the Uncharted platforming tendencies. I mean, Tomb Raider Legend platforming tendencies, with some added elements like this pickaxe climbing these special walls, or setting ropes along the levels to make certain higher or lower areas reachable. These are so-called rope bridges, and they are really handy. This isn't a radical change in the Tomb Raider philosophy, but rather an evolution of the gameplay, I'd say. Combat section is the one that has got the most radical change, and for the better. Even though Lara handles a small selection of weapons like the aforementioned axe for closer combat action or takedowns, pistol or assault rifle for spitting bullets towards an episodic congregation of baddies, the main star weapon is the one that elicits the whole theme of the game. Yes, being first in the so-called survival trilogy, finding bow and arrows imply trying to survive even if it means using weapons that might be obsolete by design. Turns out that this bow is far from the obsolete one. It feels so good to use the bow so much that I've used it at least 80% of the time in the game. Every once in a while my eyes and fingers decide to work in sync and then a plethora of arrow headshots happen. I just can't help it. I'm not this person, mind you, but I guess this is close enough. This bow and arrow approach to the game design implies yet another thing that Tomb Raider tried to incorporate in some of the previous installments, and that of course my friends is stealth. You know, silent moves, silent takedowns and silent kills if necessary. What's more silent than an arrow to the head? So you can take a silent approach and neutralize the enemies like in this level section. I mean, it's dark so it's natural to emerge out of nowhere behind the enemy's back and do a bit of a strangulation principle. Sure, that's nice, but I'm one of those people that if offered the choice between stealth and gun blazing ways of playing, I'm gonna drop some grenades and blow everything up. What can I say? Anyways, remember that the year 2013 belongs to an era when almost every single game had to have progression system or borderline RPG element. You know, collecting something called experience points to upgrade yourself or collecting whatever that needs to be collected in order to upgrade gear and so on. This is something that I'm not quite sure is necessary in a game like Tomb Raider. Why would you need a basic skill tree to upgrade Lara's abilities? So our inexperienced young lady becomes an ultimate survivalist? Well, I thought this game was about tomb raiding, not surviving in the wild. Anyways, once you gain enough experience points and find a campfire to rest, you can spend skill points in one of the three skill categories: Survivor, Hunter or Brawler. Each one of them has a certain amount of skills you can unlock to shape Lara into your playing style. Survivor style can unlock skills such as Survivalist, Arrow Retrieval, or Climber's Agility. I'm pretty sure you can understand what these skills are improving. If you want to be better at wielding weapons, you will spend some points in the Hunter section and use skills like these. Brawler skill improves Lara's melee capabilities, health, pain resistance and so forth. It's all cool and dandy on paper, but in practice, I feel it's very much redundant in this game. I always thought that having a Legend of Zelda approach in the design is far superior and rewarding. As I've said it earlier, in this game as you progress the levels and the story, Lara learns to use pickups to climb certain walls, or she learns to create rope bridges. Suddenly you can reach some areas that were inaccessible or have a shortcut to the part of the level that took too long to reach. So it's time for the exploration of the levels. But before we explore the levels, it's worth mentioning that you can collect salvage to upgrade weapons or even collect parts of the weapons to upgrade them even further. There is nothing so satisfying as having flaming or explosive arrows or an assault rifle upgraded to throw grenades. But some of these upgrades come only when you reach a certain point in the game. Okay, to the levels we go now. Gone is the globe-trotting adventure since we're stuck in this cursed Japanese island of Yamatai. You could say that the layout of the entire map follows the rivers and pools method. It's not an entirely open world, but a series of interconnected smaller open areas. I do not mind it since the setting looks like something out of a typical Tomb Raider game. Obscured island full of mysteries that are waiting to be unraveled. What's not to love there? Well, for starters, even though the landscapes look good, believable for most of the parts, and sometimes quite impressive, such as this scene. Since we are talking about Japan, everything looks so blandish, western-like, rainy, etc. I'm a very spoiled person, so games like Ghost of Tsushima have set an example of how the Japanese environment should look like. Yes, GOT spoiled me a lot. Now imagine Yamatai Island looking like Tsushima Island. Holy shit, would that be awesome. I mean, look at the Last Revelation and Egyptian levels. Those look awesome even to this day despite ancient graphics. Nevertheless, there are some impressive numbers like running through this semi-burnt mountain village full of enemies, or this vast Fallout 4 wannabe dilapidated construction called Shantytown. It makes you wonder what strategy to use to make your way around. And of course, there's gonna be a swarm of enemies coming to get you even though you just performed a cauterization on yourself 5 minutes ago. Let's not forget the mountain pass with a nice overview of the map, especially if you are high up there. Let's raise the stakes by including this nerve-wracking tower climbing section. You know it's not gonna be seamless climb, but you don't know when something like breaking off the ladder is going to happen. And when it does, you have this instantaneous mixed reaction of fear and disbelief. Lara is so close to the top of the tower and she might fall? Don't do this to my weak heart. Shipwreck Beach is yet another example of something that Tomb Raider does best: coastal levels. It looks vast and it feels like there's plenty of stuff or platforming to do. Burning rooftops of Solari Fortress makes you feel like it's hot in hell and gives you a sense of urgency. We need to save Sam from Matthias while everything is engulfed in flames. We must not forget the obligatory Uncharted sections where you run to save your bacon while everything collapses like this bridge. So cinematic. Or when this big gust of wind literally destroys the pathways as you travel, trying not to fall into oblivion. To revisit the locations faster, or to move around in general without wasting too much time, there is a fast travel system implemented. Campfires scattered throughout the game can make us go from location to location in a blink of an eye. Except when you listen to Lara talking to herself while sitting by the fire. That can take a while, but you cannot blame her. She is encouraging herself to carry on even though there is no telling what will happen. Okay now. There are, however, several drawbacks in the level design that, in my opinion, hinder the experience of the game, and they are making me question again if this is Tomb Raider or some entirely different game. First of all, there's not much temples and tomb explorations here, but lots of combat activities. No really, more often than not, this game feels like some nameless third-person shooter. The number of enemies you can kill in this game is absurd, probably even higher than one in Tomb Raider 2. I know I made a huge body count. What about the tombs? This game has these optional hidden tombs that you raid, but they feel like an afterthought. Remember finding secrets in the originals? Well, finding the tombs in these games feels like finding a slightly bigger secret room. Not cool. They're good by design and have cool but simple puzzles for you to solve just to see the repeated animation of Lara Croft opening the gold chest and not seeing what she has collected. Instead of having the entire levels being made like these tombs, they're just reduced to a fraction of the game. Puzzles are also very sparse. I mean, if you could even call them puzzles. Every one of them is reduced by pulling or pushing a certain object to interact with something. This usually means pulling a cage like this one to jump on it, just so you can jump up that high hole over there. Or smashing pillars by using gusts of wind so you can finally break the giant bell free. That same bell will fall down and break the way open so you can advance the plot. It all sounds mouthful, but it's stupidly easy. It's just too bad there was no one or two proper mind-bending puzzles to solve. Well, if you ask me for my humble opinion, I'm having a hard time recognizing this game as a Tomb Raider just because it has gone so far away from everything that I consider Tomb Raider. First of all, Lara's background is pretty much retconned in its entirety. Even though changes started with the Tomb Raider legend, it's obvious that with each new installment there's gonna be some more changes, but not necessarily for the better. Okay, you cannot have the same stealth formula for long, but for every beautiful level design that exudes classic Tomb Raider feel, there is a counterpart in the way of millions of enemies, which means lots of combat time. Combat deters from the exploration and a sense of desolation way too much for my satisfaction. Give it a bit of too much Uncharted inspiration when it comes to gameplay and story, and you are essentially having just that. Poor man's Uncharted, female version of Nathan Drake, the Uncharted S. Lara herself is not herself anymore. Her design and mannerism is also heavily tinkered, and so yeah. I'm having a hard time accepting that as much as I would want to. Like I said, I understand that this is her first adventure in this timeline, but if her personality was retained from the originals, she would still be badass, as she was as 16 years old in the originals. You cannot really learn that behavior. It's either you are semi-brash, unfazed, posh, witty, higher education British person, or you are not. But in this game, at least half of the time, I find her quite annoying and moronic. She doesn't get to me. The final frontier would be the sheer size of the phenomenon that the original Tomb Raider from 1996 was. That game was groundbreaking at the time of the release. Nobody made a game like that in a 3D environment with that kind of gameplay. It was fresh, modern, great in every way, fun, interesting, and all of the kind words that I can think of right now. It was the birth of the legend. While the reboot from 2013 with the same name was brought in the time when everything was already laid out in the gaming world, it brought literally nothing new to the table. Hell, it even borrowed heavily from the competition just for the sake to stay relevant. I'm not saying that the game is bad. No, far from it. But I felt this game should have been much more than this. But hey, however, I might be talking rubbish this entire video. Why? Well, here's the definitive evidence that might suggest that I'm in minority here. Let's check the sales figures for this game. Now, check this out. Tomb Raider 2013 has the higher number of sales of any Tomb Raider ever. A whopping 14.5 million of copies across all platforms worldwide. That game alone has sold more than the first two original games combined. How about that? So if people recognize this as a Tomb Raider game, and by voting with their wallet, they obviously do, this game is indeed Tomb Raider. Seems to be that they have embraced it harder than anyone could ever anticipate. So guess what? Everything I've said up to this point can go down the toilet, and I wasted your time. Nobody gives a rat's ass about my irrelevant opinion, huh? I know, but if you managed to stick around the entire video, thank you very much. It means a lot to me, and until next time, kanpai.